Hi, welcome, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Tracy Dyer. I work in investor relations for DXD Capital. We are so excited to share with you this investment opportunity on exclusive Nantucket Island. Today, you'll be hearing from Drew Dolan, founding principal, Cameron Pactonat, director of development, and Martha Leader, director of investor relations, all of whom will explain why we love this opportunity. Without further ado, I'll pass it over to Drew to tell us a little bit more about Nantucket.
Thank you, Tracy. My name is Drew Dolan. I'm one of the principals and founding member of DXD, and I just want to spend a couple minutes talking about storage in Nantucket in general. So a quick rendering of our project. You'll notice that it fits in, or it's going to fit in really well with the surroundings. Some really amazing finishes, really high quality standards on Nantucket. But stepping back and looking at what's going on in the island. In the last 3 months, the average home sale price was 3.6 million. The median is 2.75, and there's been a number of sales in the teens and 20 range. And it really points to this fact that Nantucket's done extremely well post-pandemic. This is the home price index. And you can see from 2020, basically the start of the pandemic till now, home prices have gone up 100%. So that gives you kind of an indication of just the demand and the limited availability Nantucket has for buyers. And when you look at Nantucket relative to these other high barrier, boutique, wealthy markets, it's done exceptionally well. It was a leader pre-pandemic, and it's continued to be a leader in terms of home valuations post-pandemic as well. There's very little developable land on Nantucket. There are really two zoning codes, and we analyzed existing zoning codes on Nantucket and found that the purple here is storable is allowed, but by special use permit only, which would require a very lengthy and very unlikely approval process from the town of Nantucket. The red are properties that are vacant that are zoned allowable for self-storage. However, in doing research on both of these, the one up to the top right is owned by the town of Nantucket, and we suspect they have affordable housing plans on it. The other one, the red in the center, is actually two lots, and they're going through a development approval, one for a small commercial building and the second for a landscape company. And so those properties will be developed in the near future, leaving virtually nothing available for future self-storage on the island. Looking at the existing self-storage on the island, there are 5 stores. None of the REITs are here. They're all regionally, locally operated self-storage. Only 2 of the 5 are really comparable because we're 100% climate control, and only 2 of these facilities are 100% climate controlled. Specifically looking at the most recent delivery, which is 100% climate controlled, we mapped where their customers are coming from, which is indicated by the purple and pink circles. So most of their customers are coming right past our site to get to their location. So it's further evidence that it puts us right really in the center of what we believe is the entire customer base for the island of Nantucket. And looking at it a different way, we looked at the path of travel that people take from one point to get to their self-storage facilities. And you can see there the red dots down in the lower right-hand corner, all the self-storage facilities. And the highest trafficked road, that Old South, passes right in front of our property. So effectively, you've got all these customers coming from west side of the island, passing our facility to get to their current storage facilities. And granted, the island's not big, but it does boil down to convenience for a lot of people. We also wanted to look at, what housing developments, new housing developments are going on the island. And there's three of them that really stood out. The first is done by Richmond Great Point, which is actually the master plan developer of the site that we're buying. Right around us, they're going to deliver 253 rental apartments. Then you've got the Nantucket Housing Authority is going to deliver 22 apartment rentals, really year-round workforce, close to us on a project called the Wiggles Way. And then Surfside Crossing, these are actually for sale, 156 for sale homes. That's also within a few minute drive time of our site. The story that we find really interesting is the population growth on Nantucket. Here's the summer population since 2010 for the next 20 years, looking out into 2030. And in 2013, there were about 38,000 people on the island in the summer. Fast forward to 2024, there's about 75,000 people on the island. So you've had almost a doubling of the population in about a 10-year period of time. And of course, we know that more people, smaller space, home prices go up, you can afford less, need for self-storage is highly, highly likely in a market that is very expensive and where you just can't afford the amount of space that you really need for all your stuff. One of the questions we received quite a bit and we wanted to dive into was this idea that it's a small island and we're delivering 74,000 square feet of storage. What's the impact? And so we looked at this relative to a square foot per capita. So the top line, that blue one, is across the United States. What's the average square feet of self-storage per person? It's almost 7. If you look at specifically Boston, it's about 4.3 square footage per person in the Boston MSA. And then the green line is Nantucket specifically, looking at climate controlled square footage. And back in 2010, it was about 3 square feet per person. And we see that line decrease as population grows. And then in 2018, Go Store delivers, that goes back up to 3 square feet per capita. Island has continued to grow in population. It's down to about 2 square feet per capita of climate controlled currently. And then when we deliver, it's going to go up to just below 3 square feet per capita, which is an extremely low ratio. But the island's still growing. It is still getting more dense. And so over time, that square feet per capita ratio will go down. And because we don't foresee or anticipate any new self-storage, that as the island gets denser and denser, we're just going to see that drop down, and our value and the rates are going to continue to climb as there's less square footage per capita. We are very fortunate to have a great relationship with Extra Space, who has a really outstanding presence in New England. They've got 114 facilities in the New England area, but they do not have any facilities on Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard. So we called Extra Space and said, hey, if we were building this on Nantucket, would you manage it for us? And they agreed to do so. So for us, it brings really good brand recognition, really good search engine optimization. It brings this professional management to the island, which the bar is very low, frankly. In us trying to contact the existing self-storage units, nobody picked up the phone. We had to leave messages. We would get a call back in about a week. One of the callbacks we got from the manager was that they were living in Europe for the summer and they weren't even on the island. So we know the opportunity to be superior in our operations and our customer service is really good, and we'll separate ourselves from what's going on with the existing self-storage facilities on the island. I'm gonna turn it over to Cam, who's been running point on the underwriting and the development of our project, and he's gonna walk you through it.
Thanks, Drew. My name is Cameron Pactonat. I am the Managing Director of Development here at DXD. My main focus and top priority is sourcing opportunities, analyzing them, and bringing them onto the DXD platform. I'm going to take the next couple minutes to go through a few of the reasons why we love this project so much, starting with the overall timeline. Then from there, I'll move over to the site plan and discuss a couple of the unique aspects of the deal. And then finally, I'll wrap up on talking about a macro view of rental rates on the island. And rental rates are one of the main pillars that we look at for every deal that we analyze, and certainly one of the reasons why we love this project so much. So as we think about timeline, we understand that Nantucket has historically been a very difficult market to not only obtain approvals for, but also permitting. The seller of the deal is a Nantucket local who was able to utilize his relationships to be able to obtain these approvals in a timely manner. We're going to close the deal with not only those approvals in hand, but also the permits, which will allow us to immediately break ground. We are anticipating just over a year for construction. We are working with general contractor who is not only aware of the unique aspects of Nantucket in the Northeast, but also self-storage buildings and facilities. Once we open our doors, we're anticipating a certificate of occupancy the fall of 2025 and a 24-month lease up, which will allow us to take advantage of 2 of the peak summer months within the island. The next piece we'll talk about is the site plan and overall design of this project. So what we've noticed with our Bristol, Rhode Island project and many other coastal markets are that design standards are elevated. And Nantucket is certainly no different from that. So this project, as we can see on the rendering, is going to bring about one of the nicer self-storage facilities in the country. But there are a few aspects to this deal, aside from just a beautiful design, that make us extremely excited. If we go to the next slide on the site plan, you'll see that there are 2 aspects to it that are different from maybe some other projects that you've seen. The first is the residential duplex to the back. This will allow us to dedicate one of those units to the on-site manager, which increases overall safety of the facility, as well as reduces some of our overhead as the payroll can come down as we're subsidizing that with residents. The other piece of the duplex is able to rent it out. And one thing that we've noticed through the difficult zoning nature of the island and the limited amount of land is that residential, especially multifamily, is extremely difficult to come by. And those units come at high demand throughout the year, especially during the summer months and the peak months. On the bottom of the page, we'll notice that there is covered parking and as well as non-covered parking. Parking is a huge commodity here on the island because if people are on the island for the summer and they want to leave, it's very difficult to find storage for parking, and if they cannot find it, they have to ship their cars back over. So in the initial discussions that we've had with the brokers, there is already interest in this, and the fact that there is covered parking will only increase that interest. Now, in the next slide, we'll look at another rendering of the design, but one thing you'll notice here are the drive-up units. So this market does have drive-up, but what's really unique about these units is that they're climate-controlled drive-up. So that will not only allow us to be able to take advantage of the tenant base that's looking for drive-up units, but allows us to get a premium on those rental rates as they are climate-controlled. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, construction on this project is going to be a little bit over a year. One of the reasons for that is because it is going to have 2 basements underground. Now, we've discussed this with our general contractor and feel comfortable reviewing the geotechnical reports as well as discussions with contractor. Due to the soils and this amount of sand, this shouldn't be a problem. And this also allows us to really maximize the amount of square footage that we can bring to the property and while adhering to the bulk restrictions in the area. The last piece I'll talk about before handing it off to Martha are the rental rates. So as mentioned earlier, rental rates are one of the main pillars when we analyze any deal. Back in 2020 and 2021, we saw that $150 for a 10 by 10 meant that a project would be financially feasible. Now, as time went on, construction pricing, interest rates, and overall land costs went up as well. And because of that, that number increased to 200. So today, when we analyze markets and deals, if a project has or a market has above $200 10 by 10 rates, we know that that project is going to be financially successful. And this is why we are so excited about Nantucket. Nantucket has doubled those rates. Now, a majority of the reason why rates are so high are because of the barriers within the market. Zoning barriers, land availability, as well as construction costs have caused for a limited supply and pushing up those rental rates. Occupancies hold high as well, which allow for operators to be able to have high year-over-year rental rate increases for their existing tenants. And talking to a number of appraisers who have been doing work on the island, one of them even mentioned that what they noticed was 12% rate growth year over year for existing tenants. Now, as you look at this chart, what we will notice is that rates have dipped from the May 2023. But we can expect that as this is a very seasonal market, and those rates are expected to go back up once we hit the peak season once again. Thank you for your time, Martha.
Thank you, Cam, and thank you, Drew. The whole team is always really excited when we are able to do something in such a high barrier market like Nantucket. It truly is exclusive, and the whole team is really excited about this one. I'm Martha Leader. I lead investor relations for DXD Capital. I'm going to walk you through the waterfall and the net investor returns for DXD Nantucket. Let's start with the waterfall. We have an 8% preferred return for this investment. That 8% starts accruing in your capital account when you make contributions, and it continues accruing until we're able to make distributions. First, we pay off that entire pref balance and then return all invested capital. From there, it's from 8 to 12%. 80% of all distributable capital stays with you, the investor, and 20% goes to DXD's Fund 2. Finally, over and above a 12% return, you, the investor, are still keeping 60% of everything that's available to distribute, and DXD's Fund 2 is keeping 40%. The returns here are really impressive. It's a ground-up development with super high rental rates, as we've learned about. On a 4-year hold, we expect the net return to be 20.03% and approaching an 18 at the 7-year, 17.82%. Your final equity multiple would be a 2.71x, meaning put $1 in, you could expect $2.71 out at the close of the investment. We are here to answer any of your questions along the way and are so grateful that you've spent part of your day with us and are interested in learning more about DXD Nantucket. Let us know how we can help. Thanks again.